Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest in a series of inspirational double acts. I'm here with a very special double act today. It's Rabbi Grunfeld and Rabbi Herman. I think it's safe to say the faces of seed, effectively. Two of the main faces, certainly. Rabbi Grunfeld is the national director and founder of Seed. Rabbi Herman is the associate national director of Seed. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you've got a busy schedule. So thank you for your time. Let's get straight into it. The story of Seed. How did it start? How did it become your personal missions? And then let's move where it is today. And then, of course, the tips for teamwork. So start from the beginning, the story of Seed. Rabbi Grunfeld.
Well, that takes us back 40 years. I was learning in Gates at Kollel. Had aspirations to become a rabbi. I had no aspirations to start anything like the organization that I did. It all came out of the blue. There was a gentleman, an American called Mr. Avi Shulman, who came to England. He was the founder of Seed Mark I, I call it, in America, where he only got together yeshiva students once a year. During the summer vacation, during the summer holidays, he would send yeshiva students to provincial cities which didn't have much Jewish provision, and he got them to sit and open up a base of medrash and learn on a one-to-one basis. And he came to England to introduce this to England as well. And I was learning at Gates at Kollel, and he went to Birmingham. He got hold of the Rabbonim, Rabbi Singer and Rabbi Koftas in Birmingham. They agreed to take a program. He went to the yeshiva, and the Rosh Yeshiva agreed to send Bochrim, and then he needed a sucker. He needed a sucker. So he went to the Gates at Kollel. He needed somebody who, a married fellow, and he went around the Kollel. I happened to be in South Africa at the time. I wasn't there, and nobody agreed to take charge of this project, but they all put forward my name because I wasn't there. And I came back, and they told me all about this strange gentleman. You must understand that 40 years ago, this kind of outreach work was not really heard of too much. And they thought he was a bit crazy, and they carried on into their books. And when I came back from South Africa, they told me there was this gentleman who was looking for me. And I said, thank goodness I wasn't there. And I went back to my learning. And about 6 weeks later, suddenly there was a phone call. In those days, let me tell you that in those days when I was in Gates at Kollel 40 years ago, I did not have a telephone at home. And the only telephone we had, it sounds so backward, but it's true. The only telephone we had was a public telephone box in the Kollel. So one day I was sitting there learning, and one of my colleagues came up to me and said, there's a phone call. So I took the call, and this was this American accent. He says to me, hello, my name's Avi Shulman. I'm speaking from Chicago Airport. And then I said, yes, I'd forgotten all about him. And then he told me the whole idea that he wanted to do it. And then he said the following. He said to me, listen, I came to England. I've got the yeshiva bochrim, the Rosh Yeshiva have said yes. I've got the Rabbonim. They've said yes to Birmingham. The only thing that's missing in this jigsaw puzzle is a young married man who will take charge of the project. I'm now asking you, let me tell you the following. If you accept this, you will turn England upside down. If you don't, England will sleep for another 100 years. A guten Tag, he said to me, good day. And that's how he left me. And he put down the phone, and he said, I'm going to phone you back in the day. Think it over. And I was so stunned that I didn't know what to do. At the end, I said, yes, I accepted it. I went to Birmingham, took 15 boys. I couldn't get over the way the people responded to the educational opportunities which we offered. I came back, and I felt very responsible, or much more responsible than I had done for Anglo Jewry. And that's how it started. And subsequently, I left the Kollel and started the organization on a professional basis.
Wow. And they lived happily ever after, as they say. I guess the success of a program or organization is probably to look back and think, oh my goodness, how could they have possibly imagined without that? right? There's both the learning and of course, the organization in general. I guess tell me, inviting Rabbi Herman in here as well, tell me what Seed became. And of course, Rabbi Herman, where did you come into this picture? Where did you enter the scene, so to speak?
Well, Seed's been around.
Oh, you want to go on, Rabbi Herman?
No, please. Where I come from.
I'll get quickly to where Rabbi Herman came into. We started a one-to-one. It grew very rapidly, and the concept which I took from America was the idea of a one-to-one in summer. I did 3 programs in the summer, but I was bored stiff during the year, and so I started the one-to-one on a weekly basis, and it grew very rapidly in United Synagogue premises around the country until we had 30 to 40 centers with 1,000 chavrusas taking place every single week. That was when it was at its peak at that stage. But I've learned, one of the things I've learned in this game is that you either adapt or you die, and things don't always continue the way they had for years to go. You cannot carry on the same way. And the one-to-ones, although they were hugely successful, there came a time when I realized that we had to do something else. People weren't ready for texts, and then we went into seminars, weekend seminars. I won't go into that in detail. We then started taking on seminars, which also lasted for many years very, very successfully. Weekends away with families and then back to one-to-ones. It was a marvelous system, follow-up system from the seminars to one-to-ones. But there came a point where even that was not working that well. The age group was becoming older and older, and the target group which we were looking for, which was young married, were becoming more and more scarce. It was at that time that Rabbi Herman joined me. I must tell you that I'd heard all about Rabbi Herman. He was a very, very successful educator in Manchester, and but I didn't want to poach him. So I once told him that if at any time you would like to join Seed, just pick up the phone and phone me. It took him 2 years, and 2 years later, the phone was picked up, and he said to me, "I'm ready to join you." We both met at a motel halfway up the M6.
Yes, I heard about this meeting, actually. This suspicious meeting at a service station, right?
Yes. And that's how I got to know Rabbi Herman, and Rabbi Herman could take over from here. Come on, Rabbi Herman.
At that time, Rabbi Grunfeld had a phone installed in his house, which made it easier to get hold of him. And I was very flattered that he would even consider me, because my beard has never been as long as his. Try as I might, it just doesn't seem to grow to that length. So the fact that he would even talk to me was quite flattering, to be honest. That was nearly, this May will be 20 years. 20 years since I joined Seed. In all honesty, what attracted me to Seed at the time was working with Rabbi Grunfeld. It was actually the partnership itself. We met on the hotel. Rabbi Grunfeld is a tremendous salesman, sold me this incredible, magnificent, halcyon description of Seed. And some of it was even true. I mean, it was remarkable. But I joined Seed. Seed at that time had a tremendous history and tremendous reputation of inspiring Anglo Jewry. But Rabbi Grunfeld also recognized that it needed something fresh and new. As he said, the young families were not really engaging so much with the shuls, but they were engaging with the schools. So we joined Seed, and I say we, myself and my wife, and it was Carmel who really suggested that we move Seed into schools. I would say we have a great partnership, Carmel and I. She has the ideas, I take the credit, and it works very well. And really, nearly 20 years ago, we launched the schools program, which was to engage with parents in Jewish primary schools across the UK. And then adapted the seminars, creating new seminars, created also a whole parenting wing of Seed, if you like. And if in the past, people had come to seminars looking for truth, is Judaism true? The generations have changed, that today people look for, is it relevant? What will it do for me? How will it enhance my life? And in many respects, to ascertain whether it's true is a later stage of learning and investigation. I think originally it was truth then relevance, and now it's relevance then truth.
Right.
And then all the programs have been created with our fabulous team, Babies and Bagels, the Links program, and many other programs, the Bar Mitzvah program, Bat Mitzvah program, the Manchester team has all developed since then. When I joined Seed, I believe our budget was about £600,000. Today, Rabbi Grunfeld, I think it's a little bit more, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not all my fault.
No.
Wow.
But he did grow it very beautifully, I must say. It is now £2 million.
Wow. There you are. And for good reason. For good reason. So can I don't know, am I allowed to ask kind of like vastness in case there's anyone who's kind of had their head in the sand for the last 20 years or so? I mean, Seed now engages very consistently with a huge number of families across schools, and as you said, there's London, there's Manchester, and then there are various families, kind of alumni families as well, correct?
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah. Can I ask for a standout moment? This was not rehearsed, but a standout moment, if you like, in the last, well, I guess, 20 or even 40 years that you can remember thinking, wow, this is incredible. This is it. This is one of the reasons that this was made effectively.
I wouldn't say it is one moment, but I'll tell you when I feel the most satisfaction. And that is when I stand under a chuppah of a child of parents who came to a seminar many years ago, who were heading, in the opposite direction. And their children most probably would have married out. That's the way they were heading. And when I stand under a chuppah and I see a young couple who are really engaged in their Judaism in a real way, I can't even describe the feelings of satisfaction that I have.
Beautiful, beautiful. Rabbi Herman, do you have a highlight or a standout moment?
I think Rabbi Grunfeld has really captured it. To see that nachas is remarkable. Of course, I love seeing parents and children engaged in the schools program. Generation Sinai. Probably for me, the annual standout moment where the original project is South African, Chief Rabbi Goldstein's credit, but we brought it to the UK, and it's probably the single biggest educational event of the UK calendar. Even though it doesn't take place only in one place, it does take place mostly on one morning. So it's before Shavuot, parents and children study together pre-prepared material. And I go at least to one or two schools, as do our team, as does Rabbi Grunfeld, and to see parents and children engaged in a dialogue with phones set aside, a dialogue that crosses generations with material that is thousands of years old, that speaks in a contemporary language. And I know that whilst I'm in this school, there are thousands of parents and children in other schools. For me, that always sends a tingle down me, because that's what we're about. We're about taking Judaism's classic message and demonstrating that it is both timely and timeless, to quote Lord Jacobowitz, timely and timeless. And I actually want to say, since this is about partnership, I'm not sure how long we've got, I actually do want to say in all seriousness that I feel that Rabbi Grunfeld, is remarkable in terms of being timely and timeless, because he's ran the organization for 40 years, still does so with enormous passion, and yet is extremely adaptable to what the organization needs. And I came in and he gave me carte blanche, if you like, to do my efforts to move the organization into necessary current direction. And that ability still remains true. Now, it's rooted firmly in Torah, but flexible to ensure that we can engage with the next generation.
It's amazing.
It sounds a bit corny, but working with Rabbi Grunfeld is always a privilege. As it standout moments.
So nice of you, thank you.
Not pre-rehearsed, you should know at all. Yeah. Genuine. Anyone who knows Rabbi Herman knows that it's always genuine. Let's just move on to the last section. We've got a couple of minutes left. Part of course, this whole series is about teamwork. It is about skills for teamwork, relationships, especially, dare I say, in the fractured COVID world on various different levels. What tips do you have working together, I guess, and also creating a team ethic in general?
Well, I feel very strongly, and some reason or other, it's not always apparent that if you want to be successful as a team, you have to appreciate people's strengths and make allowances for their weaknesses. That's the whole thing in a nutshell. People don't make allowances for other people's weaknesses, and they don't recognize their own weaknesses. And as long as we understand that everyone has weaknesses and everyone has strengths, and one plays to the strengths and makes allowances for the weaknesses, that's what creates a really strong team effort.
Great.
I'm not saying any news. I suppose it's obvious, but you know something. I've been in this game 40 years, and it's so simple, and not everybody realizes that.
Yeah, echoes of the Ramchal's introduction to Mesilas Yesharim for those scholars who are watching. Rabbi Herman, go on.
Yeah, I think it's important to take your work seriously, but not yourself too seriously. I think that way ego is in check and you make space for other people. When we start taking ourselves too seriously, the ego flares and that fragments the team. So take your work seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. Then you make space for other people and they enjoy hopefully working together.
Beautiful. And the truth is, leads us very nicely on to our next question, the same theme, but that is coping with disagreements. Disagreements within a team or within partners. How does one navigate that rocky surface?
Well, I think in the last 20 years, I think we've only had two kind of, I would call them serious disagreements. I think over the last 20 years, maybe three, none of which are my fault, of course, but and actually two of which were over something relatively trivial. So, but I think Rabbi Grunfeld I think the most important thing is to be able to talk about it, talk it through. You have to want to resolve it, and you have to be able to talk about it. If you want to resolve it and then you talk about it, there will be a way through. And I think you also have to be able to forgive. You also have to be able to forgive. If you can't forgive and you hold on to it and it's still festering, then it's not going to help. So I think those are three components. You have to want to resolve it, you have to then talk about it, and then you have to be able to let go and forgive and accept, as Rabbi Grunfeld said, that everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Maybe this was a moment of weakness on both people's part.
I just go back to what I said before. Maybe it's repetitive again, but when I took on Rabbi Herman, I soon realized his strengths, and he has strengths which I do not have, and I recognize and acknowledge that. And I think our partnership is based on a deep respect for each other and for each other's strengths and each other's weaknesses, and that's the way we work. I can't even remember the 2 or 3 times. I mean, we could have had.
Oh, I do.
Oh. All right, so we might have had some differences, but we've resolved them very, very quickly. It's definitely not about our egos, and that makes such a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Very, very correct and inspiring and genuine. I think I can feel the partnership already. Thank you for letting me in the last 15 minutes or so. If we just finish with the last question in a nutshell, it's really 30 seconds for those. This is a COVID question because this is the current era. For those who feel their stress levels rising a bit in their relationships, just a 30-second nutshell bit of advice, either from both of you, from one of you, totally up to you. 30 seconds to overcome any COVID rises in stress levels.
Tell each other you're in this together. You're in this together. We are not responsible for what has happened, and we're in this together.
Now, I would say know when to take a break. Know when to step back and to take a break, and be careful not to respond to a strong emotion with action immediately. So, for example, if you've had an email which you've responded to, which triggers a strong emotion, don't respond to it for 24 hours. take a step back, allow your emotions to calm down before you respond, especially in a extremely pressurized and unprecedented environment.
Great. Amazing. I'm off to try and unsend various emails then at that point. Like, thank you so much. It's beautiful to see how what's been a national story has started with a personal story, and that is a story of growth. There's no way of creating growth in other people if we are not genuine in growing people ourselves, and that shines true. You know, I can see the books in the background in both of your screens are very correct. Because they are a mark of you and a mark of what teamwork is and a mark of what Seed has become. And please, God continues to fulfill that mission. Look, thank you again so much for your time. We appreciate it, and continued Hatzlacha.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
You as well.